fight the power like BITCHUTE.
What's the status, 3?
I'm good, just making the world a better place, that's all.
There's a devil and an angel in my hand. The school system costs children, kids as baby sheep. You better wake the fuck up or forever sleep. You don't need bars to be in prison, just think. They take cash out of your hand for a digital chip. So if you don't do as you're told, your money will go poof, like it didn't exist. We are almost the walking dead without the body bag zipped. This is community revolution in progress, but I'm no crip. As much energy is used to tear down and divide, you can use that energy to uplift and show there's no limit when you reach for the sky. Spells, spells, spells that I am casting. Words I speak are a gift of wisdom unwrapping. A work of art, I am a master craftsman. Painting pictures with the stroke of a pen, spilling ink on paper.
There's a devil and an angel in my hand. When I was fighting the war, the devil was huge and the angel was tiny. When I started to repent, the angel grew and the devil became very small. Small, but he's a stubborn bastard.
With thoughts from within, some say it's the end, something new will begin. Look into the gates of the soul. I am him, I am God. Decisions, decisions, I create and destroy. Broke out this mental prison. Check it, yo, I always be analyzing to see who's fake. People acting Janice, running around two-faced, talking behind my back until they put in their place. You're a two-course meal without saying grace on the internet. Talking shit through your fingertips, talking high power till your shine is eclipsed. Trying to ride a wave until your mind is seasick. Cement shoes and your ankles tied with 3 bricks. This isn't Grand Theft Auto, this is real life. I will piss on your grave and throw dick to your wife. This is a warning mixed with some advice. You might be king, but I'm the ace of spades, and you just reneged. This is food for thought, bitch, eat a grenade. This is what people want, to be treated like dirt. I tried being humble, but that was absurd. All the brainless pigeons flock together like birds, pecking for crumbs until they merge with the crossroads and chuck the demi-urge. I think they had enough, I took the trash to the curb. Let the torture begin and watch them burn. Here's the urn.
It's hard to keep it real with fake people. They can take love, mix it with hate, and make evil. I'm staring at 50 shades of gray people. It's a grand deception. Like K-Reno, they are who they say they isn't. On the internet, spreading everybody's business through a troll account. Talking foul, not knowing what goes around comes around. The flat out truth is the energy change when I come around. I guess London Bridge is falling down. Hey people, stall him out. We know all about the narrative painting to control the clout. They gatekeepers trying to stop the ones trying to awake people. HOTC.
Bing bong. What's up, Danny Skylark? Look within. Top of the AM. Still haven't heard back from my. What up, Mark? Who pooted, who farted, don't get me started. I start spitting verbal retarded. Still didn't hear nothing back from YouTube. And they banned yesterday's live stream in many countries. I don't know why. These people just love fucking with me. That's what I mean. People say use different email accounts, but they already it's all about the phone's address. It has nothing to do. That's why YouTube don't like when people use address scramblers. But yeah, they go by your phone. You could use as many emails as you want. What is that called? Your IP address or whatever? I have to install. I'm gonna find a good one. Who pooted, who farted? Who pooted, who farted? Now it's gonna be stuck in my head. Yeah, I've been looking into Hartford, Connecticut, and the old electric cars. Um, let's see. Here it is. Hope Manufacturing. And let's see. This is 1906, but it might be older than that. So all this electric cars, all that giving credit to what's his name is a joke. It's 1906, Hartford, Connecticut. It says Town Fair Tire, which is fucking weird. Hold on. Hiram Percy Maxim. What a name. So, what the fuck? It says 1897. It makes me wonder. It says 1897 outside a factory in Hartford. It says bicycle manufacturer Albert Augustus Pope unveiled what he considered to be the future of the automobile industry, the battery-powered Columbia motor carriage. It was the first demonstration of a mass-produced electric car in American history. Interesting. I'm gonna pull this little ad up. It says, this is a photocopy of the May 14th, 1897 coverage of the Columbia motor carriage demonstration from the Hartford Courant. That's our newspaper. So this is 1897. The car weighing in at 1,800 pounds and reaching a top speed of 15 miles per hour, the Columbia motor carriage thrilled crowds of onlookers as it effortlessly powered up steeply inclined city roads. And if people want to know, back then, I don't think there was tar on the road. I've seen pictures of Hartford in 1906 and 1902 that had dirt on the road. Anyway. Unhindered by muddy road conditions resulting from an earlier storm. The next day, the Hartford Courant published a rave review of the vehicle under the headline "Horseless Era," right? Era, like Naga was talking about. Horseless era comes to an end, I think you're supposed to say. This is noting that even first-time drivers could manage and turn the vehicles about with as much comfort and success as they would have in driving the gentlest horse. It says Pope, a Civil War veteran who made his fortune as head of the largest bicycle manufacturing company in the United States, had founded the Columbia Electric Vehicle Company in Hartford only a year earlier in 1896. A true pioneer of the early American automotive industry, Pope firmly believed the future of transportation lay in self-propelled carriages powered by electricity, not gasoline. So that makes me think, if we look into everybody's ancestors and how, hold on. If you look at like the past, you can tell that electricity is nothing new. So maybe he reverse engineered the old electric cars that were left behind, because you could even find proof of electric trains. So it says electric cars were much quieter, cleaner, and safer than their gas-powered counterparts, and most cities could supply residents with the electricity they needed to recharge the Columbia motor carriages, 4 massive batteries by the dawn of the 20th century. For the next several years, Pope's factories produced the lion's share of American automobiles, with his creations totaling nearly half of all U.S. car productions in 1899. Pope's automotive success, however, was relatively short-lived. Electricity was a pricey commodity. Really. That's a crock of shit. Wouldn't electricity be cheaper considering the earth is constantly fucking producing it? No, they needed to sell their coal and gas. And oil. It says electricity was a pricey commodity, and most rural areas didn't have access to an electrical grid. Only a non-researching, no common sense having person would believe that. There's fucking natural grids everywhere. I might play the clip of the autodidactic interview with the woman who was explaining how most major train tracks are on power grid, like grid lines. If you look from, I know Boston, Mass, all the way down to Miami, there's one major grid line. And if you look like not all, but damn, many Northeast major cities are on that grid line, from Hartford to New York City to Philadelphia, I think Washington D.C., Boston, Mass. That's back up north, all the way down, man. Probably Coney Island, because that's New York City. Like all these major cities. What I leave off here? Yeah, that's funny, man. Most rural areas didn't have access to an electrical grid, limiting the appeal of electric cars to anyone who didn't live near a city. Okay, I see that now. Center or city center, or could afford an expensive utility bill. Furthermore, technological advances in the earliest years of the 20th century rendered internal combustion engines much safer and cheaper than ever before, resulting in cheaper gasoline-powered cars overtaking the automobile market. Even after several attempts to adjust to market demand, including dramatically increasing production of gas-powered vehicles, Pope couldn't compete, so they basically shut them down. All by design. Just like now, they're trying to get rid of gas and coal and put electricity into play. And then when that gets played out, they'll create some incident where electricity would be scarce somehow, and then they'll bring back coal and gas. These people just play games. It's just common sense, actually. Here's one of his electrical cars. Right here. When I start looking into like factories in Hartford and all in connect, there's so much rich history with the building of all this. You get into these grid lines. Alright, let's see. Greenway. What's a Greenway map? Oh, don't tell me it's where they're turning these train tracks into these so-called, like they already did that here. I didn't say Greenway maps, these fucking people. I said grid line. But now they're creating this, it's supposed to be a East Coast Greenway, and it goes from Maine, the tip of Maine or Canada, actually it looks like it starts in Canada, but it goes all the way down the coast to fucking the tip of Florida, all the way to the Bahamas. That our key, the Florida Keys. That's wild. The East Coast is sinking up to 6 millimeters. Come on. You fucking kidding me, man? Yeah, it's sinking, alright. Well, stop taking fucking sand out of the ocean and it won't sink. I mean, what the fizzle? It's common sense, no? You don't know? Seems like some of these grid maps are gone. This is odd. Very odd. I never had a problem finding the grid map. Here we go. My dumbass at grid line. No wonder I'm a little retarded. Peace, look within. Have a great day. Yeah, I'm going to get my LLC, and yup, that's gonna be my first step. I'm gonna LLC. I don't know what I'm gonna call my business yet. I might just register my name actually. I got to see how much LLCs are. They're not too expensive. I'm looking into all the tricks of the trade here. There's ways where these masons, they teach each other the tricks all the time, man. These loopholes. If you pay attention, you'll notice. What's this? Ley lines map. Map of New Hampshire. How is it a map of New Hampshire when it has the whole U.S.? Yeah, let me pull this autodidactic. I was just seeing if people are coming in, but you know, I guess not. I don't really need people to run a show, so. Huh. Interesting here. Nobody don't care about this shit. Who followed that Wade Wilson? It's amazing how it ain't amazing actually. It's pretty bugged out how um all these women are so in love with a murderer. Yeah, they're trying to free a murderer. That's wild. Women nowadays have lost their nugget. What the fuck? Alright. Anyway. Let's see what I can do. Let's see. Alrighty. All right.
This came from living a very different life, making different choices from most people, unplugging from the matrix, and basically charting my own path in my life, and making decisions that were different from most people. Where I lived, who I married, jobs that I in the school system growing up. I started my really deep questioning until much later. I was certainly aware of a lot of different things, but I didn't really start waking up to things aren't what we were told until I was probably the early 2000s. So in the last 20 years or so is the real beginning of my waking up to the lies about where we live and what's really in the environment around us. And that's been in many ways an intuitive and synchronistic journey. And so my research along the ley lines led me to seeing the same kinds of things in many different places. And the calling canals rivers, which is pretty typical. You see masonry banks, but they're natural. But
Yeah.
there's a couple of canals here and there that they built in the 1700s, 1800s. But you still have like the River Clyde in Glasgow in Scotland, the River Thames in England. Oh, they're natural.
Yep. Even
And,
the Swan River in Perth.
You've got these S shapes with masonry banks. It's like, okay. But they controlled the narrative for so long, they got away with it and removed critical thinking and all the things that would cause people to question what they were told.
I still
And
remember when I realized that rivers were canals. I was just like, I was looking at old maps and that, and then I looked at Perth where I was living, and our Swan River had, and Perth is like 150 years old or something, and masonry banks all up the river, and I was just like, oh my God, all rivers are actually man-made canals. What's like? Well, the vast majority.
She's about to really go into depth about these ley lines, and then she goes into depth about, I'm going to try to skip through some stuff, but she goes into depth about a lot of this stuff, man, and I learned a lot. from this lady.
Majority of them.
I think they pretty much are. In many cases, the stones have been obscured or removed. But you know, that's pretty much all over the earth. And so I started noticing railroads that are parallel to the canals, rivers, whatever.
Waterways.
And so there's a connection between the rivers, canals, railroads, and all this other infrastructure, hydro plants. And then there's this tendency to, oh, we don't need the trains anymore. We've got cars and buses now. So therefore, we're going to take the tracks out. And then they replace them with recreational trails, for example.
Yeah.
And what they've done is they have replaced the infrastructure of the free energy generating system, which would include what we've been talking about, the rail, the bridges, the canals, with our energy. So they removed the rails. A lot of places that had streetcars now have roads on top of them, and they have cars and people. You know, all that energy was switched over from the energy transference of the railroad.
I'll show people what she's talking about. As soon as I finish watching this, I'll show in Connecticut here, they dug up all this. They took this old railway that used to be for the factories. They dug the entire train system up, and they put, instead of putting Metro North, they put a bus line to connect all the major cities now. And these so-called tracks where you can run or walk. So I think these train systems are on major grids, because right next to the train where the bus runs, they got all these major 5G grid towers every like mile, and there's the Metro North train track that runs right along it.
Railroads to covering that up and replacing it with our hectic, chaotic human energy, and then the cars and whatnot. So it's been this intentional replacement, and somebody somewhere is benefiting from this energy grid system.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm going to go through the slides that I have, starting with what I noticed on the trip. And this was one of the first places that we went in Novi Sad, Serbia, and it's the Petrovaradin Fortress. So we crossed over this bridge, and I noticed the railroad going right across with us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the train on the bridge there, is it? Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, ding, here we go. So I find these railroads in conjunction with the star forts, and I believe that the rail infrastructure was an important part of the energy grid system, that they functioned together with the star forts, which functioned as some kind of battery, likely along with other purposes, and both were part of an integrated system.
It's another thing. The star forts. I forget about those, but those are also connected. And the star forts, interesting.
System of free energy, or let's say free energy generation and transmission that included architecture that existed worldwide. And star forts are often called batteries, but in association with a military function instead of an energy function.
Yep. And of course, all the soldiers charge out of their batteries, don't they? And then when you leave, you get discharged.
The electrical references in our everyday language blow one's mind. You've got charge cards, you've got circuits, all different kinds of circuits. You've got racing circuits, you've got circuit courts. You know, when
Yeah.
somebody is arrested, they are charged. There's a reason for that.
Mm. Yeah, and when we elect someone to be our leader, we
That's crazy she brings that up. I think me and Dom were having a conversation about that, and I had brought that up. When you're arrested, you're being charged. It all has to do with energy, man. But yeah.
we put them in charge.
There's definitely energy harvesting going on here.
Mm.
And I've believed that for a long time, but I'm getting deeper into the evidence to support that in my research and in collaboration with other people that I'm researching with. So if you look at one of the definitions of battery, it's a device that produces electricity that may have several primary or secondary cells arranged in parallel or series, as well as the battery source of energy, which provides a push or a voltage of energy to get the current flowing in a circuit. And so typically I found star forts in pairs and clusters all over the world. So it was interesting that our tour guide, we got a tour underneath, and that was kind of an interesting experience because he had his Pat story and he was with a group of people that had a far greater awareness of these kinds of things than most of us tour groups, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I have no doubt he believed every word that he said. And it was actually kind of humorous.
Oh,
But he said that at one time, and I don't know if you remember this, there was another fort across the river.
Yeah.
But it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
There's also almost 10 miles of underground corridors here, which is 16 kilometers of tunnels underneath the fortress. Now, when I look at the tunnels here, I'm reminded strongly of tunnels that I've seen all over, again, North America, but other places as well. You know, you have the same kind of brickwork.
Yep.
Very
Always.
sophisticated. And they want us to believe that these tunnels were built by, you know, laborers, slaves.
Yeah, the town
one
folk, farmers.
Yeah, exactly. You know, unskilled people,
Yeah, unskilled.
prisoners, a lot of times.
Put this under your tongue to rise up whenever you want. Today I will reveal something almost
So what's interesting about this fortress here in Serbia is that the tour guide said it was built starting in 1692 and completed in 1780. And when I looked it up, it was said to have been constructed by slave labor. And so from Google Earth, this is what it looks like. And it's the largest star fort I think I've ever seen.
It is, isn't it? It's huge.
It's huge. And it's like the second largest in Europe. I couldn't find the largest. It was the second largest.
Yeah.
And I put the star fort Portange next to it in the Netherlands because it reminded me of it. And it was the largest one I could think of. And it's probably two or three times the size of the one in Serbia. But there's similar features.
Yeah.
And so the Fort Portange was said to have been built between 1568 and 1593. So mid to late 1500s. Again, where is the technology coming from to build these places? The narrative falls way short in providing a believable explanation when you start looking at these things critically, instead of following the official narrative, like we heard at the Star Fort in Serbia, where we're going down these long hallways and there's these little teeny tiny windows. You know, they're long and narrow, and they had these soldiers and cutouts
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cutout cannon and things like that. And, so they're pushing this story hard. And, it wasn't used very much, maybe 1 or 2 battles, something like that. And so this is the railroad bridge here. That was in the first slide I showed you.
Yeah.
And you've got the railroad tracks going around this way. Whoops. Sorry. Going around this way. And it does connect. There is a railroad that connects Belgrade with Novi Sad.
Okay.
And I was looking at that. They've done some reworking of the original rails. And so my feeling is there would have been some kind of railroad going along the river. And this is the Danube River. And there are examples of that we saw in the places that we traveled to. But they've reworked a lot of things so that it's not exactly like it was originally. And then they give us the more recent construction stories. And so I wanted to give the example of, these are kind of similar in design. And these are just 2 examples of the same idea that you can find in a lot of different places all over the earth. And again, they want us to believe it was built locally for a particular purpose, but it doesn't explain how this place in Serbia looks like a place in the Netherlands, and there's almost 782 miles or 1,258 kilometers between the 2 of them.
Yeah.
How are they getting around in the 1500s and 1600s, sharing this information of this is how you build a military fortification based on what we've been told about our history, which was pretty basic. I think that was before the horse and buggy. That was probably just the horse, horse and carriage, or whatever they're going with.
Yep.
And I have
those canals by hand.
Yes. And I have a lot of doubts about the history we've been told about anything, but this is just an example of how things don't match.
Yeah.
How in the world are they pulling these amazing engineering and construction feats off with the low technology they were supposed to have had at that time?
And then they all turn out perfect. Like, we've got no examples of star forts that went wrong or didn't get completed or anything. And they're all built for war, apparently. But like, the amount of star forts you can find that have actually been used in a conflict is, I don't think I've found any yet. Like, there's a few they kind of say there was a bits around them, but so the story just doesn't make sense at all.
And we certainly didn't get a feel for how big this place was when we were there, because they just had us in one little part.
Yeah.
And I could look down, and I could see the points going off in all kinds of different directions. And I was really intrigued by that. But that it was this big, it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, I know. We were basically just up in one little part of it. I guess we were up in the left part, maybe. But even up the top there, that was all. Yeah, I think we were up there somewhere. But there was mud flood buildings up the top of it. The old red. It's the same sort of markers we see everywhere. But it was definitely. It looked like it had been mud flooded at some point. But there was one building, and literally just the ceiling was coming out of the ground, and the door always went into a hill. It was strange.
And those are the kinds of things, what you're describing, I see all over the place. And
What do y'all think? This lady's on point. Maybe no one's in here.
I have come to the conclusion that there was some kind of directed attack through the grid system, and that's why you see
All right, she's about to get into what I was talking about. about the grid system, and I just downloaded a bunch of pictures I found that show. I'm gonna show. Maybe I pulled up the other video of autodidactic showing Australia and how there's all these grid lines, and then I found these old, how the cities used to look, how everything was built, excuse me, on grid lines and stuff. I found a lot of old good stuff to show, to prove that these people were just way ahead of what we're doing. Whatever civilization, I don't even want to call it that, because whatever people were here, this place must have been like super beautiful until these certain parasites got a hold of it. No. What's up, Jay Heighton? How you doing today? Hope everything's good. What she's gonna speak now is very important about the grid lines.
That type of damage, not just here, but you also see it the estuaries and swamps and bogs and deserts and dunes, and I think that was all part of it. And I do remember the tour guides saying that there were marshes here.
Yep.
And so I think I think the grid was blown out is what I've come to the conclusion, and that's why we see these strange effects.
Like short-circuited, basically,
and just blew it out. I mean, just destroyed the surface of the earth. The grid just went haywire. And what was perfectly tuned and working together as a free energy generating system got, basically destroyed. It destroyed itself.
Yeah.
When the grid was destroyed, it took out everything else. And so I see the same mud flood effects in this part of the world that I see in my part of the world. And at this point, I would expect to see it everywhere. But now I look for it, whereas before I'm, like everybody else, it's just the way it is. They built they built these buildings in strange places. That must be it. And then you start seeing differently, and it really changes the perspective a lot.
Well, in Australia, we have little towns everywhere that have got these buildings and these same trolley systems, the train tracks, or, the tunnels, the arch roofs, the mud flooded buildings, and you find them out in the middle of nowhere, with these tiny population towns, and big red brick buildings and all this infrastructure that they got no explanation for. The explanation is convicts pretty much in Australia.
So that's pretty typical. And again, this is everywhere. You can find this everywhere. And so this is one of the places we were just kind of hanging out at Petrovaradin, and those walls were massive. And what came to my mind was this Derwent Reservoir and Dam in England. It was what I thought of when I stood next to it, was doing research on these hydroelectric or these facilities. Again, there's very sophisticated hydrology around the world, masonry based in your part of the world as well. Same kind of stories. We built this 1800s, early 1900s. And this one, for example, the Derwent Dam and Reservoir were said to have been built between 1902 and 1914 and filled with water between 1914 and 1916. And that would have been during World War I, which lasted from 1914 to 1918. So you have a lot of their construction dates happening during wartime or the Depression.
With war, like, who built them, right? All the fit young men were either off at war or they were at home working for the war, basically. So who was building this?
So it's almost like they have too much infrastructure in too few years.
Yeah, I know.
So whoever was rewriting the history, you know, whether it's the Masons or other secret societies, and the Elks, the Woodmen of the world, they were all part of this.
Yeah.
The reset history. They were the ones that came in and made everything livable and usable again. There may have been others involved, but the secret societies like that are very suspicious.
Let me know what y'all think about this.
In terms of what they were actually doing. And so I think they were like the footmen or the infantry of this, whoever was behind the reset. And there were a lot of fraternal order, brotherhood type groups, different names that all seem to be doing the same kind of thing. So, so anyway, this is just another example. I mean, it looks very similar.
It does.
And
running
when's the
water
Star
down.
Fort?
So I was just going to say, running water down across all that crystal-filled rock. I mean, that's going to create something, isn't it? Current, maybe. Water has current.
And I also remember the guide under the tunnels talking a little bit about water in the moats. And these are just teeny tiny examples of countless examples. And before I leave Novi Sad, I want to talk a little bit about the city center that we visited.
Yep.
And before I go on from here, so again, you've got quite a distance between Novi Sad and where the Derwent Reservoir is. You know, so again, they're very similar in design features, and they're very far apart. And I couldn't help but notice that the tallest points of the biggest buildings in the town center lined up with each other. So that's another thing that I look for. And there were quite a few domes on the buildings around the square. And so on this side, we have the City Hall, and on the other side, we have what's called the Name of Mary Church. And the towers would have served as antiquitect.
Yeah.
So there's the town hall. There was said to have been built in 1895, and an example of neo-Renaissance architecture that came from a competition in 1855 in which all the builders of the Austrian Empire could compete.
Of course, it came.
So this is another typical story. So a lot going on in the 1850s. You see a lot of 1854s, 1855s, 1859s, a lot of design competitions.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this story, first of all, in one article, the winner of the competition was a German construction worker, Georg Molnar, who completed a building with 4 domes, a bell tower, and a balcony. The bell was named Matilda by the citizens, and it was used as a fire alarm until it was remelted in wartime. But there's another, so this was the, you know, you can see the German construction worker, Georg Molnar. Then I found another reference saying a Hungarian architect, Molnar György, was the architect.
Oh.
Same year, 1895. And that this same Hungarian architect was responsible for the Name of Mary Church across the city square from the town hall. And so Here we go. Georgi Molnar, Hungarian architect, designed the church in 1892 for free. So they demolished the old church that year and they started the new one. And it was completed in 1893. So these are the stories that we're told about how these buildings came into existence, and they can't even keep their story straight on who built it. And
So,
inside the Church of the Name of Mary in Novi Sad, you find with the nave, the main part of the church where the congregation sits looks the same as the Seville Cathedral in Spain, which was said to have opened in 1519. The Duke University Chapel in Durham, North Carolina, which opened in 1935. Then you've got the same kind of vaulting effects going on here. And then the Christ Church in Dublin, the Christ Church Cathedral in Dublin, Ireland. So that was founded in 1030 AD, we're told, but it was extensively renovated between 1871 and 1878. So what was interesting about the Christ Church Cathedral in Dublin is that the architect who was credited with the renovation was George Edmund Street. And the renovation was financially sponsored by Henry Rowe of Mount Anvil, a distiller and brewer from Dublin. That
they're almost identical. It's crazy. And like you mentioned before, the ceilings are called vaulted ceilings, right?
Yeah.
Volts, voltage. And that's what
And I didn't
love
even
to do is change the spelling a bit, right? I just take out the O and put an AU in there and everyone can't see what's going on.
That's a great catch. Bolted. So yeah, there's an energy function going on with these as well. And there's also a musical function and frequency function. I didn't touch on the organs here and the bells, but they all had those equipped, or they were all equipped with those, and they would have been serving a purpose on the grid system. Cathedral windows, rose windows look like solfeggio frequency patterns.
Yep.
And again, I think cymatics go back to the design of the star forts.
Yep.
A lot of window shapes look like antenna. It has a relationship with frequency.
Yeah.
So there's a much different function that these buildings are
Yeah,
performing.
even the floors, the tiling underneath a lot of the domes, some of them look exactly like a digital antenna.
They do. So very high technology, advanced engineering and circuitry going on here that they're keeping from us.
Yeah, just a question while we're on here. Like, I've always wondered, like, these buildings everywhere, do you think that they were made for people to inhabit or frequent, or do you think they were machines?
Probably both. My best guess would be they were serving some kind of harmonizing function for the community.
Yep.
I don't think they were used for the same kind of worship they're used for today. I think people would come to these places and resonate together and probably heal together.
Yeah, well, it's where you went
Healing
to
centers.
feel God, right? To feel that connectedness of the all. And I think they've just, sort of flipped that and gone, oh no, it's something outside of you now that you have to worship. But I don't think that's what they were doing back in the day.
Yeah, that would be my best guess, is that they were serving a community function, but not a religious function.
Yeah.
And maybe a community, maybe a community spiritual kind of thing, but more, like you said, that connection with each other and the all and the universe. Because I really see the Earth as like a grand central station of the universe, and that these places and instruments for keeping harmony and balance, not only on the Earth, but also it went out. And I think that's what the big bell towers are. I think they were sending these frequencies out. And so when the Earth was attacked, you know, it also was an attack on everything.
Yeah,
I
sure.
see Earth as like a kingdom of heaven in physical form. And that's why Earth was a prize, and we're a prize because of who we are, and we don't know who we are. You know, we're part of that.
Yeah.
That bigger being. And they've kept that awareness from us and subverted our energy and channeled it in other ways. And I find it miraculous that we're waking up at all, considering all that's taken place here. But we're still waking up in spite of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that to me is one of the main reasons that I think all this invasion, shall we call it, didn't happen that long ago. I'm thinking 300 years max, because if they had so full of chemicals that, yeah, so I think we're talking probably 250 years since the event, and then it probably took them
somewhere in there. I mean, whatever they did with the time manipulation and time distortion, and I do have some ideas about how that took place, but whatever they did with it, it could have been even more, at least in our historical narrative, the controllers brought in their New World Order. And I see the Crystal Palace exhibition that you mentioned as the official kickoff of their new timeline.
Yeah.
With Queen Victoria opening it and all the big wigs coming in and showing off the prior technologies, claiming it for themselves. And then for the next 100 years, the World's Fairs and exhibitions were a big deal, a super big deal.
Yeah.
And they had one every year, every couple of years, and had all these special occasions. And then they kind of petered off after about 1950. We've had World Fairs since then, but they weren't like the ones between 1850 and 1950.
Yeah. Not
and
well buildings
so,
anymore.
yeah. So, you know, definitely something else going on with those. But so somewhere in the mid to late 1700s was when things really started getting up and running. And really between 1800 and 1900 in our narrative, they were setting the stage, bringing in their new system, new economic system, you know, how they were going to be exploiting us. You know, I think they destroyed the grid, and then they had to replace it as soon as possible with like coal and other so-called natural resources. But I think they were part of the original system, energy system as well. But they needed a new energy source, and they needed it fast. And that was what really pushed their development of mines and getting canals back up and running and getting railroads back up and running. They were getting that replaced so they could make money, and then when things were exhausted,
I think she's pretty much on point with that. I think I'm gonna end it right here. Well, the video at least, not the live stream, but and I have a bunch of stuff I'm gonna pull up, but let me see where she stands with this first.
resources were all dug out. Then they took the rail out, things like that.
So you see all the mining in
Australia,
and that
and that story repeats itself everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's like they knew where to go
to get the resources that they were.
They definitely, especially in Australia.
Yeah, isn't it odd how they know exactly where to go?
There's no way in the world they would have been finding resources. You know, within 50 years of landing here, nothing being here. They went straight to all the gold, straight to all the iron, straight to all these things. And yeah, I think they were following old maps. And I think that they could possibly be old civilizations, right? That were melted, and that's where all the gold was.
I think it's all in there.
I think it's all in there.
There's massive holes.
And, there's massive holes in the open pit mining.
In Australia, I've seen them.
I've seen the ones in Australia. I've seen them everywhere. It's like these big, deep holes. Far north, across Sweden
and Russia.
They could be digging the metals out from the ley lines.
North America, just massive.
Or the magnet.
And I have a lot of questions about where all that's
going.
And
nobody knows about it.
Big wires.
Nobody knows about it. Nobody.
That's a good question.
I've done some stuff on mining, and it's like
it's a lot of material, isn't it?
It's a lot of material.
Where do all the stuff go? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Food for thought.
Just food for thought.
So anyway,
those
kind of things come up.
And
the Earth story,
our story is
intrinsically connected to this energy grid. Not only what it was like before, but what's been going on ever since. The resources,
which is exploiting
us.
The resources exploiting us and
for
our
the
energy.
benefit of a few.
For the benefit of a few. And I don't even think they're human.
I agree.
Very least parasites.
I just say they're not us. They're clearly not us, right?
So their time's coming to an end, but they've had a field day for a long time.
Yeah, man.
And so talking about Antiquitech, I mentioned these spires at the top of these buildings would have been part of the energy system. And you see a lot of old buildings that are still standing that no longer have parts and pieces that they did at one time. And again, I'm just pulling a couple of pictures. There's countless pictures to choose from. Now, these are the ones that are standing. A lot of them get torn down, but some of them have survived. And so this was in Salem, Oregon, and a Grand Theater there. It was an Oddfellows building. And they're one of the ones that I mentioned as resetters. They have a very strange motto.
I don't know what it is at the moment. I've seen it.
Yeah, I did have it memorized at one time, but it's like bury the dead and educate the orphan is part of it.
Oh, wow.
The distress. You can kind of see it here. Where you've got these rolly kind of streets, and this is street level here, and then this is street level down here, and this is a place I take people to show them how mud flooded it is. And you've got the windows. I was talking about the cathedral rose windows, and these type of windows here are like antenna, fire or something, or lightning or something. So they had, and so there's a couple of things I want to point out about this location. Belgrade is the capital and largest city in Serbia, and one of the oldest continuously occupied cities in the world.
Wow.
And so, like I said, my feeling that one point in time, but I have found tons of examples. So a lot of the same stuff in Belgrade at the Belgrade Fortress. A big one.
A big one. Yeah.
And then when I was looking at the Bortanj Fortress, they have the same kind of thing there.
Oh.
So what's that all about? The dinosaurs.
Teaching us real history.
These places, because there's something going on with the star forts as an energy source of some kind. And somebody left me a comment that it was like RAM with the computer. And I don't know enough about that to really speculate. I just feel like these are batteries of some kind. So there's maybe like computer, like a battery that's a computer of some kind. I don't know, but
well, I mean, they're full of, you know, there's crystalline rock and, you know, cement and more everywhere, right? And that holds memory. So yeah. Wonder if we can download the information from a star fort.
I think there's technologies that existed. I mean, I hear things like that about crystals, even like crystal skulls.
Yes.
Or some kind of computer bank. So it would not surprise me at all if there was some high-tech stuff just in that respect alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's all high tech, but just not from our perspective, right? With what we've been taught, we think bricks and mortar. We don't see that as tech, even though now they're telling us, right, that you can use red bricks as batteries. You know, so all this stuff's coming out, but yeah, we've just been given the perspective. It's just it's just bricks and mortar, and that doesn't mean anything. And yeah, they've done a job on us.
They used to control the narrative, but not anymore. Thank goodness. So this is the walk into the Belgrade Fortress. And you know, again, you've got the rail nearby. And this is, we're going to cross over this street. This is where that location is right here, going across to the fortress.
Yep.
And then there's, you know, tram stops here, but I just wanted to show that there's a railroad presence here.
Oh, yeah, okay, making a circuit around it, yeah.
And then the other thing that struck me about this location, you can see it better here, is that the Belgrade Fortress sits where the Danube goes one way and the Sava River goes another way. So it's at the confluence of these two rivers. And I see that a lot. I see these star forts in locations just like the one in Belgrade. And I gave an example of Fort Pitt and Fort Duquesne at the forks of the Ohio in Pittsburgh. And, you know, you see the same idea. Move that over here. Where you can see the outline of star forts here, which is reflected in this map up here. And you've got three rivers here. So you've got, or that's what they call it, the Ohio, the Monongahela, and the Allegheny, looking very nice and neat here in this picture. And you've got the bridges, you've got stadiums down here, and that's another whole nother story. Pittsburgh was a major place in the development of this new system, whether steel or finance or coal. Pittsburgh was a big part of the controller's story when they were setting up everything. A lot going on here.
Yeah, I noticed like years ago as well, when I was sort of in my earlier days, you have all these splits, but you also have in a lot islands in the rivers near star forts that, and I was always wondering why there are always islands in the middle of the river. And is that the same kind of thing? It's splitting the current somehow, or creating two currents, you know, maybe the positive, the negative, something like that.
I want to give some examples of that. So this is a railroad junction, Monocacy Junction, from 1872. And then here's this junction in Des Moines, Iowa, of the Des Moines and Raccoon River. So it looks the same.
Yeah.
Like a junction. And that's another term that you find in
junction box, yeah.
In looking at the electrical terminology, you can make a connection to an energy function as well. And a junction is defined as an act of joining or adjoining things. And that implies intentionality as opposed to something that just happens randomly. And these are, I've seen this everywhere also. River confluences, but it's all natural.
Yes, I got into that a couple of years ago. The ions, man.
Election.
Yep. Yeah. Elect the ion, right? Elect, like, and it, gosh.
Yeah, and like in this example, you have junct ion. Conjunct ion.
Yes. Also, conjunct is to join, is junct to.
So we've got Fort Pickens here, which is the one on the far right. There's pretty typical looking star fort. And Fort Barrancas is here across Pensacola Bay, and it's still intact. And then you have this place called Advanced Redoubt here, and it's all around the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, which is a big naval base there.
And that's down on the Caribbean. Is that what it's called? The Caribbean? Is that what it's called? In the Gulf? The Gulf.
It's off the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
It's in Western Florida, and I'm getting close to the end of the PowerPoint here, but this is a good example because there's a lot of star forts here in this one location. And what I said earlier about the star forts being a battery, and a battery is defined as a device that produces electricity that may have several primary or secondary cells arranged in parallel or series, and that they provide a source of energy which provides a push or a voltage of energy to get the current flowing in a circuit. And so if you find one star fort somewhere, there's probably been at least one more historically.
Yeah.
And in some places there's quite a few that are still there, but I always look for more when I find one. And while there's a lot of star forts that are acknowledged and known and documented, there's a ton of star forts that don't exist anymore. And you really have to dig to find out.
A lot of them are quarries and like mines, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're still being used for energy sources. I've seen examples of ones like in New York State off of the Hudson River that you can tell it was a star fort, but it's got all the top surface peeled off of it, and they're clearly harvesting it.
Harvesting something, yeah. Just a quick comment too. Have you ever thought about the connection between golf course and Gulf, as in the Gulf of Mexico?
I think there's connections. Like, what's a gulf? It's like a chasm, right?
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff. And I'm going to end up with what I think probably happened and what we see. And I think it's very different from what the Earth's surface used to look like. But this is the example of Fort George in Pensacola, where there's a little bit left. You can find it. There's a couple of walls. It's right across from this big church over here. Looks like a nice one, like a basilica or something. And then there was the Fort of Pensacola, which used to look like this, but it doesn't exist anymore. I was able to find the location from the coordinates, and it would have been here in Pensacola. So that's what's there now. And when I'm looking up, this is when I started to get the aha that there was really a connection with these star forts and railroads, because just a couple of blocks south of where the star fort was, you have the rail yards here. And then if you compare that with a circuit board diagram, the rail yards look very similar.
Yes, they do.
And so, part of the journey of the developing a lot of information just from the research that I've done already, how I came into the whole idea of the circuit board Earth and that kind of thing, and I know other people have looked at that as well. I've just put together some pieces over the years with a lot of different examples of how everything in existence seemed to be perfectly placed on the Earth, serving some kind of function. And the narrative just can't even explain how that happened.
Not at all. I mean, it's the whole precision, isn't it? Like of the old world and what they built, but it's all just so precisely laid out, and even the buildings are just so, precise, right? All the windows are on top of each other, all the same sizes. Like, it's just, the symmetry is crazy. Do you think that we are now part of this system, like walking around in cities and things?
I think that's what the Matrix is. I think they replaced the free energy generating system with our energy. So when they took out the rails and replaced it with roads and trails.
Okay. So instead of the train carrying the charge, it's us.
Yeah, I believe that.
Wow.
I believe that's what they did. I mean, how did we get to this place of this existential threat and transhumanism and all that other stuff? I mean, they've been herding us or pushing us, the controllers who see us as their herd, in this direction of, we don't know of our energy and our source power, our connection with our creator. We don't know we're directly connected to that. They do. And they need source energy. They need our energy to survive, because they don't have that. And so they have to get it synthetically. And so, again, I see their time coming to an end, but I think they got darn close to achieving their goals. But I don't see that as our end. I see a better future for us than what was planned, is my take on what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's crazy, but we're seeing things. Like, for the first time, we can read the book, we can read the playbook, we can see it happening in real time. We know what they're doing. And while there's a portion of the population that's still asleep, when you realize the length and the extent of what they've done to control our world and our reality and how we see things, and programming us and distracting us, and in order to live you have to work and earn money, and you can live beyond your means with a charge card. They've set this system up, and I think we're getting to a place where we can start to dismantle that. But it has taken us waking up in larger numbers than was possible before. And there's a lot of people that are still asleep. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to go to a doctor's surgery yesterday, and there's still people in masks, and someone came up next to me to check their child's jabby wabby test. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, get me out of here.
I have
Crazy.
to say though, I realized when I went to my bank the other day that they had taken the plastic or the plexiglass down finally.
Nice.
So
Finally.
you can actually see the tellers without the plexiglass. I thought that was interesting. That was Wells Fargo here.
And
So,
someone made a lot of
you know, I
money
think
off those plexiglass wind screens or whatever, didn't they? A position where looking at the show going on, it seems that every move they make is not working anymore.
don't add up. There's just two slides I want to end this with.
Yeah.
So this is Hobart in Tasmania. And again, you have the multiple batteries and star forts here, not too far from where you are.
Yep.
And they look like the other forts that we were talking about.
Exactly.
The ones I just showed you in Pensacola.
In Australia.
Yeah. And these are just a few. There's plenty around.
Sydney Harbour's just chock full of them. It's crazy. And the thing is with star forts is the story, the mainstream narrative says that basically what they were built between the 1500s and about 1750 by French and Italian, as far as I can work out, roaming stonemasons who just kind of walked around and built these things. But when you get to Australia, they tell us there was no white people here till 1788, no technology, no nothing. So like it's a complete anomaly in Australia. They can't explain any of these star forts, but they're clearly star forts.
And if you look at Tasmanian history since European colonization, there is an extensive railroad history there in Tasmania.
Yeah.
And a lot of those rail trails that I was talking about where they were turned into recreational trails, they might have a little bit of track that's used for like tourist attractions and things like that, but they took that out as well. So it just doesn't add up. And I just wanted to end with places like this. So you've got the White Cliffs of Dover here around this on the English Channel. And then you've got the Australian coast.
Yeah, the great.
And the 12 Apostles. You've got the lighthouses here. This is the coast of England down here, and you've got the lighthouses here. And my belief is that the land just sheared off at places like this, and where there were rails and the lighthouses, I don't think were what we're told. I think they became that. Yeah, they're right next to the water, that's for sure. Guide ships through dangerous reefs. But I think they had a much different function with the energy grid having to do with light frequencies, light energy. And that, again, this is just a couple of examples. I've got more of where I think the land just something happened, some kind of attack. My feeling is it was an attack that caused the land just to fall off into the water. And then you see places, I mean, even looking at Google Earth, you can see shallow areas.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah,
So
and especially in Australia, that they are just sheer cliffs and they're pretty big too. And most of that area in Australia is out of bounds. You're not allowed to go there. You're definitely not allowed to fly drones anywhere around there. There's a military presence, so it's for just like a piece of land in the middle of nowhere. Why would they be cordoning that off, right? There's a lot of questions. There's actually places in Australia that are off bounds that are bigger than the UK, like just individual areas you can't go in. And if you drive the Stewart Highway through the middle of Australia, Darwin to Alice Springs, there's signs everywhere saying you're not allowed to leave the road. But they tell us it's just a desert, right? There's nothing there, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So the Vatican Library has nothing on Australia. It's the same idea. I mean, nope, we got all these books hidden away. Too bad, so sad.
Sorry.
We're not going to tell you what's in there.
Yeah. Unless you
And I think they've known that, which is why they've.
That's nothing compared to what's coming, man. Awesome, man. Well, that was really cool. So basically, what you say, and I would agree, and I think I'm pretty sure that you were the first person I saw who put out the circuit board.
This is literally what I was talking about. In the middle of Australia, there's these like fucking grid lines. You could tell there was something here. All right. That video is packed with a lot of info. I found these layouts, man, and there's some stuff in Australia desert that kind of look like some of these layouts that are all over the world. All this sacred geometry. I mean, all them circles you were seeing in the Australian look like just like this. And they go into like all these like walkways, and all that's left is a desert. But and she was mentioning along the coast that they just dropped into the water. Salt water is a conductor. Like it makes me think what they're doing with these towers that are going up everywhere. These 5G towers, and that could create a net all over the fucking world. A net of microwave energy. It just reminds me of a big fucking microwave. So I always try to think, what are they doing, you know? And all these fucking ley lines and you can clearly see we live on some sort of I want to say computer. You know, the cities are motherboards. You see this stuff all in the Middle East, in the desert, Australia. And it just reminds the sun with the sun, because all this desert stuff is where the sun in its route. That's where all these lands are with the desert. So, huh? Interesting. Sun overloaded and cooked it like a fucking hot pocket. And it makes me think about where I live, and to get to where the reservoirs are, believe it or not, I'm thinking about it now. Where all these shit was mined out. There's a lot of so-called mountains, or what you would call slate. That's what some of these big mountains are. It's like slate. And they were mining it all out. And then it turned to a reservoir. But they're still mining. You know, you could see their path they took when they were mining. And it makes me think, what were they mining out? Because I don't think it's just for the stone, they say. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna leave it here. Be a quick live stream today. I speak Spanglish. I speak Slanglish. I don't know why we speak English. We're not from England. Let's see. Where is this?